Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of MSP Sales Podcast. This is kind of a special week for us. We're still early on in the podcast, and we have our first guest, which is kind of cool. So we've got Ben Terry, who comes to us. He is a part of the Eureka Process, somebody that we've recently been introduced to, and Rob and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have him on the podcast, talk a little bit about his history and what he's looking to do moving forward. So with that, Ben, very nice to have you on. How's everything going today?
Good. Thank you very much for having me. Everything's been going well, and excited to join OSR Manage this morning, and my first time to meet Allison. It's great to be with you.
Great. I'll jump in there, Tim, if you don't mind. So Ben, I've heard a lot about you, and this is the first time for Allison. If you could just give us your kind of history. How did you get before you were at Eureka? How did you get there? What was your background?
It's a crazy journey, and I'll try to keep it short. I've had the privilege of working in a very diverse set of industries over the years. I even worked for NASA for a really brief period of time. I was on their launch and recovery team for a minute, and it was a temporary. I was hoping it would turn into a long-term situation because it was very cool. It was a very cool job, but it ended up being a seasonal, temporary gig when I was in my early 20s. However, I went from there and ended up in the transport or logistical industry with UPS and FedEx. I actually was an operations manager with FedEx for a number of years, and then went into some other nonprofit jobs for a minute, and then I went to work for a friend of mine, and after a couple of years of helping him scale his business, I think it got a little bit scary for him that he's in his late 50s, early 60s, and he's like, man, I didn't expect it to feel like this and be like this, and I want to scale back. And so I'd spent 2 years helping him scale, and then and opening up 2 or 3 new locations, hiring, 15 or 20 employees. And then sure enough, after he scaled everything back, I was the last one to be shown the door, so to speak. And it was amicable. It was a very amicable, but here I am in my 50s looking for a new gig. And I'm like, what am I going to do now? And so I was going through, I was on Indeed, saw a posting for an account manager's position for an IT firm and IT MSP. And I was reading the requirements, and it said nothing about technology. And I'm like, well, that's got to be an oversight. Surely you've got to know something about technology to be an account manager. So I just went ahead and put my name in the hat because I met all the qualifications. And sure enough, they were actually looking. I think they told me they had spent a year and a half trying to find someone that could communicate well with C-level people. And they said, we can teach you technology. We just need somebody that can communicate, sit in a room with business owners and explain what it is we do and help them see value in our solution set. So yeah, that's how I ended up in the MSP world, and they did exactly what they said they would do. They taught me what I needed to know about the vernacular of the IT world, services world, and then shortly after that, I went into my president of the firm came to me and said, "Hey, I feel like you could really excel at outside sales, new logo business. Would you be interested in that?" And I said, I've never done that. You're going to have to spend some time coaching me? And he said, yeah. He goes, I'll help you. And sure enough, he put me in. I agreed to go into outside sales and had a really good run of winning new business for I don't remember, maybe 4 years until I went on to my next gig. So yeah, it's been a wild ride in the IT MSP world, and it's been and today I'm coaching crazy. I'm consulting and coaching MSPs on processes, best practices, leadership, helping them develop their leadership skills, and at Eureka Process. And so it's been a great move for me. I've been very pleased.
Okay. So you just said something that we don't hear too much. You mentioned that you came into the industry as an account manager, and then you switched over to a hunter.
Yes.
That is very atypical. That is very atypical. Usually, usually, if anything, it's the other way around. Like somebody comes in as a hunter and then they kind of back down to being back down. It's not the right word.
Yeah.
Historically, we have seen hunters be better farmers than farmers move into that hunting role. What was that transition like for you?
So here's what really helped me transition. I had a coworker at my very first MSP, and he encouraged me. He goes, read this. You've got to read this book. And the name of the book is Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. Have you guys read that? Have you?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah. Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. I love the title, first of all, and I was very intrigued when I heard the title. And essentially the premise of the book is, look, stop trying to sell people stuff. Just listen to what they need. Acknowledge that you've heard the need, and then design a solution to meet the need. That's sales. And I had a misunderstanding of what sales should be like. And I was just always scared of getting into sales because I didn't want to come across as a used car salesman, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so that I just kind of always, wasn't really interested in that. I didn't want to, and I've been approached by, I'm sure as many of you have, I've been approached by many people about multi-level marketing opportunities. And I just never really wanted to be that guy. But I also misunderstood what selling was supposed to be about. And that book changed my entire mindset about selling. And so I could sit down with someone and have a conversation about what they need and how I could help them, or we could help them meet that need. And if it makes sense, let's do business together. If it doesn't make sense, no harm, no foul. Let's all walk away friends, and maybe at another date and time in the future it might work. But yeah, when I adopted that mindset, it just, because one of the kind of inherent skills I have is it's easy for me to be around new people. That part does not bother me. And so going up to a stranger is not, walking into a room with a stranger has never been an issue. And just having a conversation has never been a challenge for me. So coupled with my new information about selling, with my skill to just be around people and connect with people in a very casual way, sales was easy for me in the beginning.
That's one of the biggest things that we go through with whether they're sales executives or account managers is exactly what you just pointed out. You don't want to get them in a situation where they're going to be dealing with a prospect or an existing client and they're unnecessarily upselling. And we're always talking to them about this. Like, you're going in looking at a technology roadmap. What do they have today? What might they need tomorrow? Uncover the pain and sell to that. Don't
That's right.
go in and do unnecessary upsell. And that's something that we have to train the reps on, because they do
Yeah.
just want to walk in and show up and throw up and put everything out there.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right, Allison. One of the things that I learned early on was to see the IT roadmap and that conversation as, look, your job is to help the business owner, decision makers, to understand the risk inside their environment if they do not adopt what you're recommending for them. And so I became a consultant, really, is what I became, not a sales guy. And I'm like, look, here's what we're recommending based on best practices. If you don't adopt this recommendation, here's the potential risk to your organization. And I don't have to sell that. They're the ones writing the checks. They get to choose. Do you want to pay me now, or do you want to pay me later if this thing goes south on you? And so, yeah, I always kind of thought of it as, life insurance as a breadwinner for a family. When you're young and you're kind of, you don't have a lot of assets, you don't have a lot of liquidity, life insurance is a great product in case the worst thing happens. So I always kind of thought of it like that for business owners when it comes to technology and your data and your all of that is like, just protect yourself in the event of something catastrophic.
So I have a question. I kind of want to step back a little bit to your past. Now that you're, a consultant and you're helping leadership understand who they are and what they want to do and how they want to grow. Let's go back to the business owner who you came in there, helped them. He expanded significantly and said, "Ruh-roh, I'm not a fan." Right.
Yeah.
And scale back. What do you think that he should have understood about himself before he blew up, scaled up for vanity, whatever reason, and then decided he wanted his sanity back? Like, how would you?
That's a great question. So here's what I believe about that individual, and we've kind of lost touch over the years, but what I believe about him was he had so much input from people that he looked at and saw as successful, and was oftentimes would want to go chase that thing that they were doing and take it and move it into his context. And I think that's certainly we can learn from others, and we should learn from others, and we should adopt best practices in our organizations. But you really have to know who you are and what your vision is. What is your core values?
Sure.
And let that be your guiding light, and take best practices from others when it makes sense. But I feel like that's what he struggled with. He never could really, he wasn't confident in who he was. And I think that was that he saw this kind of bright, shiny object out there, growth, revenue increase, more people, more locations. And it just overwhelmed him. Once it got there, it overwhelmed him, and he didn't trust who he was, and he didn't trust, and he began to distrust that it was all going. Because we'd only worked together for 2 years. That's not a lot of time when you're at the back end of your career.
Yeah.
To trust someone making all of these decisions and taking you to places that you said you wanted to go. But when you got there, it was very unsettling. So I think that was that's what I look back on, and again, this is armchair psychology. I don't know for sure, but that's my suspicions. He just wasn't confident in who he was.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I mean, Rob and I, we started OSR almost 11 years ago. In fact, 11 years ago in 2 months, in this coming November. And Allison's been here for 5 years, 6, going on 6.
Awesome.
Feels like 9.
Yeah.
Feels like 29. Okay.
Feels like 12 or 13.
How with that?
The amount of companies more early on, before we really knew, because we were a lead generation company when we first started, and the amount of clients that we had early on in that first 18 to 24 months, that they came to us because they thought they wanted to grow, but the reality was they liked the idea and the theory of growing because they felt like that's exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
But deep down, they didn't really want to. They wanted the slow and steady wins a race, which is fine too. But that doesn't always happen when you've got the sales engine going. So that was, when you say that story, we've seen that story play out a few times with some of our clients, especially early on when we started.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I see in the MSP industry in particular, as I work with MSP owners and leadership teams, is I try to help them. I try to help them grasp what's required to grow, and not just grow in revenue, but to grow in maturity as an organization. You've got in this business, and really any service business, right? Any service business, because we're not making widgets. We're providing a service. That's it. I mean, we sell some widgets, but we're not manufacturing anything.
Yeah.
And so your greatest liability, which is also your greatest asset, are your people. And if you're not managing that piece of it well, it's not going to end where you want it to end.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of owners underestimate, is how important it is to make sure your processes are right. But the processes will not matter if you're not coaching and holding your people accountable to process. If you're not doing that simple blocking and tackling, it just is not going to matter. Yeah. And that's the one thing I see most organizations struggle with is following up when process is not being followed, because it's got to be consistent. There's got to be a sense of accountability on the employee to follow process. And if you're not willing to have those hard conversations at times, it's just never going to change. Money, there are a few exceptions, right? There's some companies where revenue can cover up a lot of problems. If you have enough revenue and you just keep piling it in the top of the funnel, it can cover up some of your weaknesses. But there will be a day of reckoning if you don't fix it.
Yep.
Well, those are two of the biggest ones. I mean, with the majority of the MSPs, when we onboard and ask, do you have SOPs in place? Do you have process in place? No. They're winging it through what they think is their process. Do you have SMART goals in place? Do you have KPIs in place?
Right.
No, I have a sales rep and they're told to sell. Well, that's not going to get them there.
That's right.
But then we have the opposite side too, going back to something you brought up before, the shinies. There's a lot of business owners that we work with, and that
oh my goodness, yes,
what's trending, pivot, what's trending, let's go here. That can make or break you.
I mean, how many tools have we seen deployed or onboarded inside of an organization and are not utilized, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Sure is.
I mean, you go to a conference, you see the next shiny sales platform, and got to come back and implement them all. And before you know it, you've got 50 different technologies in your stack, and you don't know what half of them do.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to quote Alan Edwards. He and even Gozenta, our mothership, so to speak, their tagline is "All software sucks. We're trying to make it suck less."
Well,
and it's, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what software you really use. I mean, I was talking to Alan about project management software, and did he have a recommendation? He goes, "It doesn't matter really, as long as you use it. Just make sure you're going, whatever software you buy, just use it effectively. Use it with processes in place, and maximize what you buy. Whatever it is you buy, maximize it." I mean, we see a lot, right? We see a lot of companies go from one tool to another when they've never really optimize what they had in the first place.
We see it all the time with CRMs. They'll you implement
absolutely.
a CRM for sales and marketing, and you're only using one piece of it. The value of what you just paid for, you're just not getting.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time. I really appreciate you jumping on with us. I think one take-home message here is processes are fantastic, but trying to get your employees to follow that process and then hold them accountable to that process is, one of the linchpins of an organization and what you're going to be doing. So having your employees follow the process is definitely key to making sure that everything is going well. Ben, I really appreciate you being here today. Just to let everybody know, we will be putting Ben's information up on his LinkedIn profile, up on our YouTube channel, and where we keep our podcast. And please, like and subscribe as you can. Ben, thank you. Really appreciate it today.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Tim, Allison, take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.